Talk to me about how you broker those discussions with your IT colleagues and how you get the buy-in to be able to introduce this new philosophy, which I think is amazing. What were some of the results, the outcomes after you kind of implemented that approach? Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you do to create or to maintain team cohesion, strategic focus, the right level of operational measurement in such a diffuse organization.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your fast track to smarter insurance technology and stronger leadership. In the next 5 minutes, we're going to show you a better way to lead, scale, and innovate without the chaos. Let's get into it.
Katie Curie, thank you so much for joining me at another episode of 5 Minutes here at InsurTech Hartford Symposium 2025. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here, Miguel.
Awesome. There's a question, Katie, that I ask all of my guests because there's usually a fascinating story behind it. How did you get into insurance?
I don't know if it's fascinating, but I spent a lot of years working in financial services in New York City. And we were solving a lot of the same problems that insurance is solving as well.
Sure.
So a few years ago, I had an opportunity to move to insurance, and I'm an operations leader. So I love operations problems.
Right.
And I moved to insurance, and lo and behold, I'm solving some of the same problems here.
Awesome. And so tell me about your role and where you are now.
Sure. I work at MSI, and I am in renters insurance, and I am an operations leader. I lead agents who sell renters insurance. I have a quality and process improvement team, and a variety of others that are supporting roles for the distribution channel.
That's awesome. I want to ask you because I hadn't anticipated the start from a financial services perspective. I guess enabling you and preparing you for some of the same things that you would see in insurance. What are some of those corollaries where you bring those lessons over?
Yeah, well, contact centers is one area where contact center of the future should look somewhat similar in the insurance space as well as in financial services space. Some of the other areas are how we actually go about solving the problems. Low code automation, no code automation, some of the citizen developers that are doing work to solve the problem. A lot of this we did a few years ago in financial services. And I think in some ways, insurance is a more traditional and maybe more risk-averse kind of industry. And so some of the problems that we had already solved in financial services were kind of now at the forefront of insurance. And so I'm using some of the same tools. Some of them are glamorous and exciting and technology-driven tools, and some of them are just kind of basic process improvement tools that don't go out of style.
I love that. Katie, I got to ask you a question. As a former CIO, by the way, I love what you said about the concept of a citizen developer, no and low code. I absolutely love that. But as a former CIO, I put on my hat to say, shadow IT.
Shadow IT.
So talk to me about how you broker those discussions with your IT colleagues and how you get the buy-in to be able to introduce this new philosophy, which I think is amazing. But just talk to me about your tricks.
So I think the key is to have the one team mentality. The technology, operations, even business, client success, we're not really siloed separate teams. We have different roles, but we have the same goals, the same strategy, the same definition of success and KPIs. And so when I did citizen developers, and I have not done it in insurance, I've done it just in financial services.
Got it.
What I had to do is make sure that my technology team and operations teams were in very close communication, that this initiative was championed and supported as a training and upskilling initiative, and was endorsed by the CIO. And we did not create a shadow IT organization. What we did is we created a digital DNA and the skill set and the problem-solving mindset that our operations people could then do a little bit of solving their own problems and then identify, well, where am I stuck? Where I need technology? And where do I need to go to my technology roadmap? So I would say the keys of what worked for, in that organization was that one team mentality, not looking at ourselves as really separate teams, not infringing and imposing on the roadmap that the technology team has, and having a strong champion in the senior level at the tech organization who understands that we are all technologists. These operations people, they may not work in the technology team, but today we're all working in technology companies. We're all technologists.
Yeah.
So we need to have the skills.
I love that. I'm digging for more learning here, Katie, because
Sure.
so you described this, how you did this. What were some of the results, the outcomes, and I'm thinking the kind of improvements after you kind of implemented that approach?
Yeah. So we had a number of very highly manual quality type checks
Mm-hmm.
that previously I had a whole team in India who was supporting me and doing those manually.
All right.
What we were able to do is 80% of those were able to be solved and semi-automated by primarily the citizen developers.
Mm-hmm.
The citizen developers were closer to this. They cared about it. It was part of their job. It never made this on my technology roadmap because our technology team was solving much bigger problems. They were revenue generating, efficiency. This was a small, discrete problem that was solved by the team. And look, we had lots of problems.
Mm-hmm.
We had one step forward, two steps back, and it was a lot of it was a big learning, but we had delivered some pretty good results.
I love that. One of the things that you said in there is really fascinating. I think it's instructive is that that transition of responsibility from IT to the citizen developer, it really enables IT to focus on higher value things where they can they can implement those technical skills on things that a citizen developer can't.
Absolutely.
That's
exactly right. And that's why I am still a fan of citizen developers. I know they've gone out of style for the past few years, precisely because of shadow IT and some of the tension between business and technology. But I believe that there's discrete use case for citizen developers and low-code automation within the operations team. The operations teams, those are the unsung heroes of the organizations. They are the ones responding to emails, picking up phone calls from the clients. There's so much data and insights and so many ideas that they have. But a lot of the work that they need to solve and the problems they need to solve, they never make it to the technology roadmap because they're not significant enough. The ROI is not there. And yet, you need to deploy many dozens or hundreds of people offshore to actually do this manually. I think that there's a discrete use case. I think when you pair that low code or no code automation with something that never goes out of style, Six Sigma and lean process improvement, when you've got your well-designed, improved processes, you've got some of the skills on your team on low code automation, and you have the support of the technology team, you can solve quite a few problems that otherwise would just persist and would, create an inefficient process for your clients and for your colleagues.
Last question on the no loco, because this was a little bit, kind of off on the side, and it's fascinating. My question is really about how do we think about governance? Because I think a lot of people, especially the IT folks, as my CIO, I think citizen developer, think I got an SDLC, I'm managing quality, these guys are just going to go and do stuff. Does citizen developer, does no low code, does that mean no governance?
Absolutely not. You need strong governance, and if anything, you probably need more and better governance. And the governance needs to be done in conjunction between the business and the technology team. A lot of times, I know there's sandbox, and there's places where the citizen developers can play and learn without breaking the system and causing a lot of problems. We had the problems we were solving. We had a very strong compliance and governance framework. Now, strong governance framework does not mean multiple committees and approvals that take months for a simple project. I think the governance framework needs to be clear, it needs to be simple, and the citizen developer just simply needs to know what can I do and what can I not do. And the technology team has to have a little bit of investment in assisting and in guiding the citizen developers. It's not a completely hands-off, knock yourself out, learn, figure it out, and solve the problem. No, there needs to be a bit of investment. And I think also for every dollar we spend on technology or even on low code and no code, we need an allocation of funds for change management to go all across the organization. And all of these are difficult problems to solve. I don't want to say that I've solved them all, but I've seen different iterations in different businesses and different situations, and I think strong governance network, a really good relationship, and a one team mentality between technology, business, operations, support, client success, marketing, that helps. And understanding that we invest in our colleagues and that's how we build their skills.
Sure.
And when we do that, we retain them, they stay longer, and that translates directly into better service for our clients.
That makes a ton of sense to me. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about operations. And what's really fascinating to me, and kind of reading some of your backstory, I might call you a strategic powerhouse as I think about some of the things that you've done. How do you, Katie, think about we talk a lot about the day-to-day tasks that we have from an operational perspective, and we can call that tactical stuff that we've got to do, right? But then now we introduce this concept of being strategic in an operating unit. What does that look like in practice, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because a lot of operational leaders, especially mid-level leaders, are focused so much on the day-to-day work and solving the problem,
right,
that they don't dedicate the time, the space, and the resources on transforming your business. As an ops leader, you need to always be running your business and transforming your business.
Interesting.
Those are the two pieces, the two sides of the coin, the two pieces of your role. How do you balance it? It depends on the organization. If you're scaling and growing, you need to always ask yourself, well, what is the true problem I'm solving here? And what is the client willing to pay for? I can have lots of exciting innovation projects, pet projects that I want to do because they're fun, and I think my team is going to enjoy it. But if the client is not willing to pay for it, and it's not going to be something that drives us towards our future state, it's not going to work. I think the second thing that ops leaders need to have real good clarity. They don't need to have all the answers, because nobody has all the answers, but they need to have intuition and insight on what the future of their ops is going to look like 12 months from now, 18 months from now. Are we going more towards self-service? We're talking about insurance.
Sure.
Are we going to be eliminating agents? And the answer, in my view, is absolutely not. We're going to continue to have agents that need. There are lots of people that, like my mom, she would only buy insurance talking to an agent. But my 19-year-old son will never buy insurance talking to an agent. He only wants to do self-service. So I think understanding where we're going to be and then solving both of those problems, that's the strategic kind of focus. And how much time you spend on tactical versus strategic will depend on the organization, your resources, your technology team. But the problems can always be solved. It's either a process problem, a people problem, or a technology problem. And how do you rebalance? It depends on which resources you have and, where your organization is going.
Katie, as you think about the organizations that you've led, you've led massive teams across multiple continents. And I'm thinking about the challenge that a lot of leaders, including myself to some extent, have managing just teams in the US, but in multiple remote locations, right? But talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you do to create or to maintain team cohesion, strategic focus, the right level of operational measurement in such a diffuse organization.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a challenge that I particularly enjoy, especially because I love working with Gen Z and millennials.
Okay.
And I think there is a new way to lead.
Okay.
And the new way to lead involves humility, involves community, and curiosity. There's a book that I really love. Edward Hess wrote it. It's called Humility is the New Smart. And leaders now don't necessarily need to have all the answers. In fact, answers and knowledge, it's at our fingertips. We can ask ChatGPT, and I don't want to be cavalier about it, but there are lots of experts around skills and knowledge. What leaders need to know is recognize good ideas, and by soliciting good ideas from your team, whether your team is US based, whether they're based in India, in the Philippines, wherever they are, treating everyone like one team and creating that opportunity for them to bring ideas to the problems that they're facing day to day. I think that's one part of humility and curiosity. Creating a community is very important as well. And community can be created virtually. It does not have to be co-located. We do not have to be all in the same office. we learned through COVID that
Sure.
our teams can be dispersed and we still can create a strong culture. But how do you create a strong culture? It's by hiring people that will fit in your culture, hiring for the future, trying to get people that will raise your culture. And so that means sometimes investing in people and resources that actually are more skilled and more expensive. And creating that community where people feel that this is not just coming in at 9 or 8 or whatever, doing my job and going. This is a place where food and fun and conversations and talking about your pets and having a Slack channel or a Teams channel where you share birthdays and pets and kids pictures. I have found that people want to be part of a strong community.
Yeah.
They want to be seen, they want to be recognized, and they value that. And so creating that virtually is a little bit harder than creating it
Not impossible.
in person, but we have to keep trying. And just because it's quite challenging to create that across the globe cohesive culture, we still need to continue to try. And I think when you have a few champions in different locations, they're the ones that carry the torch. You as a leader cannot do it all yourself. You rely on your champions, you have humility, you have curiosity, and you create that community, and you hope that it's good enough where you will have a strong team.
It makes perfect sense to me, Katie. And a matter of fact, I'm having a little bit of a Peter Drucker moment here because you use the term culture an awful lot in there. And what I'm realizing is that, as an operational leader, I might default to process. I might default to structure to try to create that cohesion and that connectivity. Whereas I can do it via culture. It's much stickier and it spreads faster.
Absolutely.
Love that.
It spreads faster. It is organic and it engages people. And as leaders, you want to be kind of powerful enough to be heard, but also charismatic enough to be followed. And when you do it organically, it taps into people's emotions. And, we talk about bringing people to work, not just their brains, but their hearts as well. And I think it gets us a little bit closer to that.
Yeah. You said earlier that you love working with Gen Z and millennials. Tell me why.
I really love working with Gen Z because they come into the organizations and we have an opportunity to really teach them what we're about, to help them, bring them into hopefully a positive culture, and train them from the ground up. They don't come with a bad habit. They don't come up being jaded, and they don't usually come in with kind of negative attitudes. They come in, a lot of times they're lacking some skills, but they have enthusiasm and they want to learn. And I think they have a very different perspective. They're resourceful. They're looking at the easiest way to solve a problem. They're going to look it up on, ChatGPT. They're going to use whatever resources available to them. They're going to call a friend, a classmate. And I find that their resourcefulness, their enthusiasm, and a lot of times, if we engage them right, they will go above and beyond to deliver. I know we hear a lot about Gen Z being entitled and wanting structure and need to get promotions every 6 months. And I think that there's some of that, but when they're in the right environment, you mold them and you shape them. And yes, you do have to promote them frequently. And yes, you have to have a good path for learning and you have to have good mentorship for them. But when you solve that problem, the energy, the enthusiasm, and the resourcefulness that they bring is infectious. And then other people across the organization, I managed the team once where I had people that their age really varied. Some were very close to retirement. And I had reverse mentors. I had brought all of the Gen Zs that were interested in doing technology mentorship for, colleagues that were kind of in their second half or kind of the last quarter of their career. They partnered so well, and both sides with this reverse mentorship got a lot of help and opened their minds to a different way of solving the problem. And I had some of those combined teams that won hackathons had a lot of fun, and you created friendships.
I love that. Yeah, I see that too. And I've got kids that are both millennials and Gen Z. They run the gamut, and I see that, especially from my Gen Z kids, that desire for belonging and contribution, but recognition and movement. I love that. It's a very, very fascinating observation.
I think it's a problem that we do need to think about as leaders, and
Right.
we need to solve how we engage millennials.
Yes.
And we need to actually change a little bit how we lead and, what we think about in terms of promotions and recognition and pay increases and bonuses. That is an important aspect for our Gen Z colleagues, but look, for everybody as well, because we're all on tighter time frames now.
That's right.
And what some people did 10 years ago and how things are today, very different. So
100%.
community recognition, the pacing careers differently, and being a leader that has humility and creates community.
I love that. I'm going to go get that book, by the way. So thank you so much for that recommendation. Katie, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been amazing. I've learned so much, and you've dispelled a lot of kind of operational kind of preconceptions that I've always operated on, and I feel like also too you've brought a really interesting concept around strategy into the whole operating environment, which is very fascinating. Thank you so much again for your time, Katie. I really appreciate you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.